Hey everybody, it's Mr. Heisey here, and this quick video is going to talk to you a little bit about different ways that texts are organized, or what we'll call patterns of organization. When you look at some of the terms right here in this box right here, like cause and effect or compare and contrast, they probably sound familiar to you. And the main point of today is that nothing is just written randomly. There's an organization to textbooks and to nonfiction text generally. And if you can identify how it's organized, how the information is put together, and in what type of style, it's going to help you a lot to identify what's important and what's not. Remember, I keep telling you that good readers can look at a text quickly and identify the passages that are more important than others and focus on those. Identifying how a text is organized or what pattern of organization it falls under is a really, really important tool to doing that step. There are 6 types that we're going to discuss today, and all of them will probably seem familiar to you in one way or another, whether or not the titles are a thing that you recognize. We'll look first at a definition style of organization, and then illustration and example, compare and contrast, cause and effect, classification, and then chronological order. And every part that I'm going through, this corresponds with the passages that are in your text, so you might want to follow along as you listen. I'll also ask you to pause the video once in a while, so please do that so that you can look over each text, each passage that I give you as an example for each of the 6 different patterns. So the first one we're going to look at is a definition. This is on 346 and 347. In this pattern, in this type of organization, an author typically gives you a term and then defines it. Biology, chemistry textbooks, technical textbooks often do this, and then they'll elaborate on what that term is. And it sounds very straightforward, but this is only one of many ways of categorizing something, of organizing info. So go ahead, pause the video right now, and read the passage in the center to identify how this is a definition example. Okay, hopefully when you look at this, you saw that segregation and discrimination, obviously they're bolded, but they're the ones that are the terms being defined. They're defined right there in parentheses in the text, and the rest of the passage goes on to explain and elaborate upon those 2 terms. So sometimes just a straightforward informational technical text is organized by definition. Sometimes it's not, though. Sometimes it'll give you a term and then give you specific examples of that term, and in this case we call that an illustration example, and this one goes along on page 348 in your text. They might give you a term and then give real-world examples right after that. Pause the video for a moment, read over this passage, and identify what the what the illustration is for that example. Okay, now the important term here is italicized. It's fidelity, and that one's defined right there for you. But then there are examples and illustrations of fidelity thereafter, and hopefully you identified promises that nurses might make, like I'll be back with your pain medication, you'll be all right, or I'll find out for you. In this case, those are all examples of the illustration of fidelity that's listed right there. Anytime you're reading and there's a term that's explained or defined and then there are real-world examples given to you, that follows this illustration example model. Compare and contrast is one that you're probably familiar with also. You'll have 2 concepts, 2 objects, and an author might give the similarities of those topics or the differences between them. Pause the video right now, read over this passage for a moment, and identify how this is a compare-contrast passage. Okay, hopefully you saw that this is going through the differences between a consumer, someone that uses a service or a commodity, versus a patient who is undergoing medical treatment. They talk about customers a little bit in nursing, as all these passages have to do with nursing, but this is a contrast, and it's showing the differences between someone purchasing a commodity versus somebody getting treatment right there. Compare contrast is a really, really common way of organizing something. If I were annotating this, I might write 1 next to consumer and 2 next to patient to show that those are, or maybe A and B, to show that those are 2 different concepts that relate to each other. They're just being shown is different in the passage. Cause and effect, another really, really common way of organizing information. Sometimes this might show actions and reactions. In history texts, cause and effect is used really often. It might show several effects for one cause, or it might show several causes for one effect. But go ahead and read this and see if you can identify exactly what the cause and what the effect is in this example. So pause the video for a moment. Okay, hopefully you looked this over and you saw that there are different causes to being identified as someone as an impaired nurse. Stress or use of drugs and alcohol can be different causes, and again, they come together to have one effect. On the other hand, you might read a passage that one cause of something can have several different effects. So there's no one way to do it, but it's a really, really common way of organizing info. Classification is an important one as well. Sometimes things are put into different categories. And this one goes along in page 357. If information is categorized into different ideas, different bigger concepts, that's one way that things can be organized. So pause it right now and go ahead and take a look at this passage. Okay, sorry there. Hopefully you saw that there are different categories that things fall under. In this case, it's nice because it's numbered here for us. But that might not always be the case. So when you're reading and you see that things are broken down into different categories, a lot of times they might have bullets, they might have subheadings in a text to tip it off to you. That's a helpful thing to know when you're going through and reading the information. Last, there's chronological order. This is when things are shown in sequential order of events, and a lot of initial phrases will tip you off to that. If this is the case, again, I might annotate something in a certain way. If I'm reading a text and I notice that it's showing info chronologically. So go ahead and look this text over for a moment. And in this case, in this text, again, out of your textbook, it's helpful there's a box with a number line on it and dates put in through this. And that's showing events that happen chronologically. Again, you might not have that, but if it's just written within the text and you see after that, or then this happened, those are tip-offs that that's an event that's being shown chronologically. So there are 6 of these that are the most common use. Things can be organized in other ways too, but these are the ones that are the most common that you'll come across. What I want you to do right now, when you open up in various pages in the text and look over the quiz at the next page of this module, each of these organization patterns has several passages after it in the section that's called practicing the skill. I've got 6 questions. Each one organizes, or each one has to do with the passage 1 section in the text under that practicing the skill. So go to the next page, have the text out next to you, and the page numbers will tip you off as to what questions are being asked.